I sat at the dining table, my dinner long gone cold, as my stepmother Evelyn's words echoed in the air. Well, then you'll have to find another place to live, won't you? We can't have parasites in this house. The injustice of it all burned inside me. For years, I'd been treated like a servant in my own home while her children, Nathan and Chloe, did nothing. And now this, Evelyn demanding I pay rent to live in the house my grandparents left me, while her kids lived here for free. Something inside me finally snapped. I took a deep breath, my voice surprisingly calm. So let me get this straight. Nathan, who graduated college 2 years ago and spends his days playing video games, doesn't have to pay rent. Chloe, who's in her 3rd year of college and has never done a single chore in this house, doesn't have to pay either. But I do. Evelyn dabbed her mouth with a napkin, her smile smug. I decided my children don't need to pay rent while they're getting established, she replied, her tone dripping with superiority. A strange calm washed over me. Maybe it was the years of bottled-up frustration, or maybe it was simply time for the truth to come out. I felt a smile creep onto my face, not the polite one I usually force to keep the peace, but something sharper, something that made Evelyn's smile falter. Well, that's interesting, I said, leaning back in my chair. I'm not going to pay rent, because this house belongs to me. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Nathan burst out laughing, followed by Chloe's high-pitched giggle. Evelyn laughed too, but there was a nervous edge to it. What are you talking about? She asked, still chuckling. This house is mine, I repeated, not breaking eye contact. The laughter faded as they processed my words. Evelyn's face cycled through emotions, amusement, confusion, disbelief, and, finally, something close to panic. That's ridiculous, she stammered, grabbing her phone. I'm calling your father right now. Her perfectly manicured nails tapped aggressively on the screen as she put the call on speaker. The ringing echoed through the kitchen. Hello? My dad, Thomas, answered, his voice crackling through the speaker. Thomas, Abigail is telling some interesting stories about the house, Evelyn said, her voice tense but controlled. She says the house belongs to her. That's not true, right? The silence on the other end stretched on for what felt like an eternity. When my dad finally spoke, his voice was hesitant. Well, he cleared his throat. Actually, my in-laws put the house in Abigail's name before they passed away. Evelyn's face turned red. How could you not tell me this? She practically screamed. I didn't think it was important, my dad replied weakly. It never seemed relevant. Not relevant? Evelyn's voice rose to a shriek. Not relevant that your teenage daughter owns our house? She hung up before he could respond, slamming the phone onto the table. The kitchen fell into an uncomfortable silence, broken only by the hum of the refrigerator. Nathan and Chloe stared at me like they'd never seen me before. Evelyn was breathing heavily, clearly trying to compose herself. When she finally spoke, her voice was artificially cheerful, but I could hear the tremor in it. Well, she forced a laugh that sounded more like a sob. This has been a big misunderstanding. Of course you don't need to pay rent, Abigail. Let's just forget this conversation, okay? I'd completely lost my appetite. Without a word, I stood up and went upstairs. As I climbed the stairs, I heard hurried whispers from below, Evelyn's harsh tone mixed with Nathan and Chloe's anxious voices. By 6 a.m. the next morning, I was already awake, staring at the ceiling, thinking about how much had changed in just a few hours. Around 7, I heard movement downstairs, the familiar sound of Evelyn making her morning coffee. I was about to head down for breakfast when I overheard her on the phone with my dad. Thomas, you need to do something about this situation, she said, her voice low but intense. Your daughter can't, we just need to make her leave. I froze on the stairs, holding my breath. I know the house is hers, Thomas, Evelyn continued, frustration clear in her voice, but she's making things difficult. She doesn't fit here anymore. She's becoming a problem. There was a pause, and I could sense my dad's hesitation, even from where I stood. It's her house, he said slowly. I can't just kick her out. No one's talking about kicking her out, Evelyn replied, her voice turning sweet, that syrupy tone she used to manipulate. We just need to steer her in the right direction. What about those out-of-state colleges she applied to? You could encourage her to go to one of them. Tell her it'd be good for her independence. My stomach twisted as I heard my dad's reluctant reply. Maybe you're right, he said. I'll talk to her about moving out for college. It might be better for everyone. I waited until Evelyn ended the call, then calmly walked into the kitchen, keeping my face neutral. I started pouring myself a bowl of cereal, pretending I hadn't heard a thing. Nathan and Chloe came in shortly after, both looking uncomfortable. Evelyn was the last to enter, still holding her phone, and chirped, "Good morning, everyone," as if nothing had happened the night before. We all sat down, the only sounds the crunching of cereal and the occasional clink of spoons against bowls. Then, as casually as if I were commenting on the weather, I said, "Oh, and starting next month, all of you will have to start paying rent." The silence in the kitchen was so heavy I could hear the ticking of the clock on the wall. Evelyn stared at me as if I'd spoken in a foreign language. Nathan and Chloe froze, their spoons midair, exchanging nervous glances. Evelyn broke the silence, forcing a laugh that sounded more like a sob. "You're joking, right?" she asked, her voice almost childlike, desperately trying to maintain control. "No, Evelyn, I'm not joking," I said, my voice calm but firm. "You've been living here for free for years. It's time to contribute." She swallowed hard, trying to regain her composure. "That doesn't make sense. We're a family." "We're not a family," I interrupted, my patience gone. "You made that very clear when you demanded I pay rent while your children lived here without lifting a finger. Now everyone will be treated the same." Nathan scoffed, trying to appear indifferent, but his insecurity was obvious. "This is ridiculous. I'm not paying anything." "Then you're free to find another place to live," I shot back, locking eyes with him. Chloe, who usually avoided confrontations, finally spoke up. "I'm still in college. How do you expect me to pay rent?" "Maybe you should have thought about that before spending money on parties and expensive clothes," I replied. "But don't worry, the rent will be fair. I can even help you find a job." Evelyn finally snapped, slamming her hand on the table. "You've completely lost your mind. This house has always been a home for all of us. I won't let you turn it into some kind of ridiculous boarding house." I stared at her, unwavering. "Funny hearing that from you, Evelyn, because just yesterday I overheard you trying to convince my father to kick me out of my own house. And you thought I wouldn't find out." The color drained from her face, and for a moment, she was speechless. Chloe looked like she was about to faint, and Nathan stared at his plate as if he wanted to disappear. I was only trying to help you become more independent," Evelyn stammered, attempting to mask her panic. "Oh, of course. Independence," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "How kind of you to try to help me move out of the house my grandparents left me while you and your children continue living here without paying a dime." She tried to speak, but I raised my hand to stop her. "Don't worry, I've already decided. You'll all have formal contracts. If you want to keep living here, it'll be on my terms." Evelyn stood abruptly, trying to maintain a sense of authority. "This is unacceptable. Thomas would never allow this." I smiled, tired but firm. "Maybe you should call him again and ask what he thinks. Or better yet, ask what he'll do when I decide to kick everyone out and sell the house." The shock on her face was almost satisfying. She knew I had the power to do exactly that, and the thought clearly terrified her. That night, locked in my room, I could hear muffled murmurs and arguments from downstairs. Evelyn was probably trying to come up with a plan to get around the situation, but what she didn't know was that I was more than ready to face her. The next day, I called for a meeting. Evelyn tried to refuse, but I made it clear she had no choice. By 10 a.m., we were all seated in the living room, Evelyn, Nathan, and Chloe looking uncomfortable, while I sat calmly, confident. "Here are the rental contracts," I said, handing each of them a copy. "You have 1 month to decide if you want to stay." Evelyn took the paper with trembling hands, and as she read, her face grew redder. "This is absurd. You can't do this." "Actually, I can," I replied. "I own the house." Nathan threw the contract on the floor, his face full of irritation. "This is unfair. We're your family." "No, Nathan," I said, my voice steady. You're my stepmother and my half-siblings who treated me like a maid for years. If you want to stay here, you'll pay like anyone else. The argument dragged on for hours, but I didn't back down. In the end, I made it clear there was no room for negotiation. Evelyn finally realized she had no way out, but before leaving the room, she took one last shot. You'll never have your father's support after this. I smiled, exhausted but resolute. We'll see. In the following days, Evelyn tried everything, manipulating my dad, creating tension in the house, even trying to turn Nathan and Chloe against me. But nothing worked. They all signed the contracts, and the first payment came the next month. For the first time in years, I felt in control. I didn't care what they thought. I had the house, the power, and most importantly, my peace of mind. They could deal with the reality now. The months went by, and the pressure inside the house only grew. At first, Evelyn, Nathan, and Chloe tried to act as if nothing had changed. They reluctantly paid the first month of rent, probably hoping I'd change my mind. But I didn't. Soon, the payments started getting delayed, first by a few days, then by weeks. The excuses were always the same: unexpected expenses, piled-up bills, temporary difficulties. But I knew it wasn't just that. Nathan stopped buying his expensive video games and spent more time locked in his room. Chloe no longer showed off new clothes and rarely went out. And Evelyn, she seemed to be falling apart. She looked exhausted, her face tired with deep, dark circles under her eyes. I decided it was time to settle the situation once and for all. On a rainy evening, I gathered everyone in the living room. The atmosphere was heavy. My dad sat on the couch, looking defeated, while Evelyn stood with her arms crossed, trying to maintain a superiority that no longer existed. Nathan and Chloe, as usual, kept their heads down, avoiding eye contact. It's been 3 months since you've paid the full rent, I began, my voice calm but firm. I could easily throw all of you out. Evelyn widened her eyes, outraged. You would never do that. I looked at her coldly. Don't underestimate how much I've endured. But I'll be fair. I won't charge my father rent, not because he can't pay, but because I know he's being manipulated. Out of respect for him, I'll spare him this responsibility. My dad lifted his head, surprised, but stayed silent. He knew I was right. Now, with you, Evelyn, it's different, I continued, locking my gaze on her. You've always treated me like a maid here, bossing me around while your children didn't lift a finger. So I've thought of something fair. You can continue living here, but instead of paying with money, you'll pay with work. You'll clean the house, do the laundry, cook, you'll be the maid here. Evelyn's face turned pale. She raised a hand to her mouth, as if trying to contain her despair. You must be joking, she whispered, her voice weak. I'm not, I said, my voice firm. And to make things crystal clear, you'll wear a maid's uniform. I want you in that black and white apron, hairnet on your head, the full outfit. If you're going to work, do it properly. Evelyn stood frozen for a few seconds, then, unable to hold back her tears, turned to my dad. Thomas, are you going to let her humiliate me like this? My dad looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Dad, with all due respect, don't interfere, I said. You know why I'm not charging you, but Evelyn needs to pay for what she's done. He sighed, lowering his head. Evelyn remained there, quietly sobbing. Chloe watched her, pale, and Nathan didn't react at all. Evelyn left the room, defeated. The next morning, I went downstairs and found Evelyn in the kitchen. She was wearing a maid's uniform, a simple black dress, a white apron tied around her waist, and a hairnet covering her hair. Her expression was empty as she mechanically cleaned the counter. Good morning, Evelyn, I said naturally. She didn't answer. I grabbed a glass of orange juice and sipped it calmly, then, as if by accident, let the glass slip from my hand, spilling the juice all over the floor. Oh, how clumsy of me, I said. Could you clean that up, please? She stood still for a moment, then slowly knelt and started cleaning the floor with a cloth. It didn't stop there. At lunch, I made a point of sitting at the table and asking Evelyn to serve me. Evelyn, put more sauce on my plate, and please don't spill it. She served me in silence, her hands trembling. I stared directly at her, savoring every second of that role reversal. It wasn't cruelty, it was justice. Later in the afternoon, I called her into the living room. Evelyn, the living room windows are dirty. I want you to clean them now. She hesitated. But it's already getting dark. I tilted my head. I asked you to clean them, Evelyn. Or would you prefer to pay rent with money? She turned red, bit her lips, and grabbed the cleaning supplies. As she climbed onto the stool to clean the windows, I looked at Nathan and Chloe, who silently watched the scene. You two could help, you know. Or would you prefer to sign new contracts with higher rent? They quickly got up and disappeared into their rooms. Evelyn kept cleaning in silence, and I sat there, watching. That night I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling a peace I hadn't felt in years. It wasn't joy, it wasn't malice, it was the certainty that I had finally put things in order. Evelyn got exactly what she deserved. My dad made his choice, and I made mine. If anyone thought I was cruel, let them think what they wanted. No one had lived what I lived. I had my peace now, and I wouldn't give that up for anyone. Over the next few months, the dynamic in the house settled into a new normal. Evelyn continued her role as the maid, her pride shattered, but her presence subdued. Nathan and Chloe eventually found part-time jobs to cover their rent, their attitudes shifting from entitlement to reluctant acceptance. My dad, though initially torn, began to see the fairness in my actions and even started standing up to Evelyn's manipulations. For the first time, I felt respected in my own home. I had reclaimed my space, my power, and my dignity, and I knew I'd never let anyone take that away from me again.